mind her parents' graves. In Norway they set special pride. They have flowers at the gravesite. And she never neglected that. $5 here and $5 there went to my cousin Andrea. But she canned and she baked, and we had all these cousins coming over. Everybody wanted a job. So I think we had 11 cousins. Maybe it was 10 cousins and one uncle.
Was this before the Depression?
No, this was during the Depression.
Well, they still took immigrants.
Oh, they came over from Norway by the boatload.
I guess there was a depression in Norway too at the time, and it affected the world.
Right. And my uncle came back. He had a family over there of 4 children. And we met them at the boat, and we gave them a bath. My mother was always afraid of bed bugs. And then they stayed with us for about 3 weeks, and they got a job, and they moved on. We had to teach them English. So we had a lot of fun things happen. And then on their time off, why they would come back, they were all men, except my cousin Gerda. And
Gerda, she must have been a woman then.
My mother trained her, the American vacuum cleaner and American foods, so that she eventually got a job as a domestic.
We'll be back in a moment. First, we have a commercial with our commercial sales girl, Christine Hansen. Her had made enough money to put food on the table, and you didn't go hungry.
That's right. She always got $25 a week.
Well, that seems pretty generous. That's $100 a month, which is probably about $1,000 a month now.
She fed many people. All the nephews would come, and later on, when they had girlfriends, they would bring their girlfriends. Thursday was their day off, and she had those friends coming. So we always had an open house with a full table. She baked bread week in, week out, yulakaga and cakes. I can remember coming home from high school and the kitchen table loaded with donuts. It didn't help us any because we all got loaded too, too much weight. But anyhow, we learned hospitality.
Would you say that some of those people that came, that probably they had not been eating so well, and your mother provided them with a square meal?
I think so. It was home cooking, yes. After well, all this time I was always into sports. Beside the tennis, my father taught any number of young people how to swim. He loved to teach them, and he always took us on Saturday trips, picnics, and up to Mount Hope Lake. And he always took us to the young people rallies. We didn't have Pioneer Girls and those things, so we didn't belong to the Girl Scouts. But we always had contact. And even though it was Depression, he said, you can sew all the dresses you want. He says, I'll give you money. And he kept up his promise. We would put out the palm of our hand. And he says, I thought I gave you money yesterday. Yes, but you promised. And so we would buy 3 yards of material to make a dress, 25 cents a yard. And I had loads of dresses. And when I was graduated from high school, I had won the sewing prize.
Now tell us about Gabriel Opsel. Was he a hard man, or could he be soft and laughing and funny?
Well, he was the youngest of, he was the only boy in a family of 6. He had 5 older sisters.
Didn't they all stay behind in Norway, and he was the only one to come to America?
He left. Actually, what he was brought up in was the equivalent of a log cabin, with the typical Norwegian grass roof. And years later, that was torn down. So in 1928, when we went to visit it, I don't believe it stood there, but we knew just where it had been.
But he's the only child that came to America from that family?
Yeah, that's right, and he had different jobs. He was a chauffeur. He was a stoker on one of the ferries going across the Hudson River. He worked up in the Orange Quarry at the top of Eagle Rock. But he would do things on his own. He would sit and plunk at the piano and try to get the melody. And the left hand, he would just play odd bass notes to fill it in. So had he had education, he would have had musical training. But he was self-trained. He learned how to read blueprints, and he became a construction superintendent for the Charles Eden Company. And as I say, he had jobs, with New York firms. And many times I wish I had made a list of those places, because I would know what he did. When he lost his job, he decided to start his own business, and he got a truck. And little by word of mouth, he built homes for people in Summit, the school people heard about him, and he built homes for Miss Benson and Mr. Bender, the principal, and the White family on Birchwood.
And Armstrongs.
And the Armstrongs, New York investment man. And he kept busy.
When did he start contracting on his own, and when did he retire from his own business?
Well, it was in 1928, after the financial crisis.
So he built homes from 1928 until about 1952?
No, not that late. He, during the war, there was no building. And so then he got a job working, he sold lumber for a while, Ideal Lumber, and he only did that for about a year or so. And he was depressed. He sat on the sofa, I remember, and, you know, was thinking about the future. And then he got a job with the U.S. naval people. And I remember one job was up in Troy, New York. He built a huge, naval depot, isn't that what they called it, Ovi?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we went up there to visit him. Many times he was very homesick, and he'd come home just for a Wednesday evening. And he lived with a Jewish family. He wasn't used to that, and he asked for bacon one time, and then the lady served it with an oyster fork. And he found out later that the dish that had the bacon on it had to be crushed.
Had to be destroyed.
Destroyed, yes, because they were such a strict...
Because a Gentile had eaten from it?
That's right, and no pork was served on
It was
it.
considered.
Why would they even have pork in the house?
She had to go buy it. That was his request.
Well, didn't he know that Jewish people don't normally eat that?
Well, we weren't
Maybe
so
he didn't.
aware of it. We weren't so aware of it, but he was paying his board and so on. He had a good appetite. So we went up there to visit him. We had Mr. Reimer along, the high school principal, because he lived up there. And we had him to dinner. And I always remember my mother, you know, she liked to cook. My dad wasn't home, so she said, now, du me underholden. That meant that I was responsible for the conversation part of it. We had always had such respect for the high school principal, and to think that he was coming to our house for dinner. Well, he was a historian specialist. And it wasn't long at the dinner table before he got my mother engrossed. He said, who married King Haakon? And he knew the whole lineage of the Norwegian royalty.
He had looked it up before I came out.
And my mother, no, he didn't. He was a real history buff.
Was he a walking encyclopedia?
He was. Well, anyhow, the night that his sister had us for dinner, he was a bachelor. Why, we were going to take him home, you know. He lived at the Y down in Orange. And so as we went down, I think it was Route 9 in New York, I was driving then. Ovi was there, and he was in the back seat. That was a long ride. We had no, parkway, and weaving in and out, and you'd have red lights. But anyhow, he would point over to this mansion. That was a Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt married, so-and-so from the Roosevelt family. And over here on the left, we have this family. And it was fascinating. The first thing we heard the whistle and the bright lights of a car coming around, and it was the police. And yours truly, got her first traffic ticket. I think it's the only traffic ticket I ever got. And was I ever humiliated, the high school principal? Well, anyhow, the trooper drew up, and he said, do you realize how fast you were going? And I said, no. And he said, officer, he says, can I take the blame for it? He says, I was distracting her. He says, I was talking. No, he said, follow